different denominators. If the denominators do not match, we need to find the least common multiple, or in this case, the least common denominator. So then how we do this is we multiply the denominators by missing factors. Then we will multiply the numerators by the same factors. And the reason that we multiply both the top and the bottom number in each fraction is to keep the fraction the same. Now let's look at an example. Example 1. Find the total resistance of a series circuit that contains 3 resistors given the resistance of 2/3 ohms, 1/6 ohms, and 5/12 ohms. So for this problem, we are adding up these 3 different numbers. So we have a 3, a 6, and a 12. So how we can go about this is we can break down our denominators into the factorization of them. So we have 2/3. We can't break down 3 any further, but then we go 1, 6. 6 can be broken down into 2 times 3, and then 12 can be broken down into 2 times 2 times 3. So when we're saying that we are going to multiply the fraction by the missing factors to get our common denominator, we look at the first one. We see we have a 3. So now that we've done this, we see that. So now we've broken them down into the prime factorization. So we notice that our unique factors are 2 and 3. And so we notice that our highest factor of 2 will be 2 squared. So we'll just go 2 times 2, and then we only have 1 3 in each one. So this will be our common denominator, which is just 12. But this helps us, so now we know what we need to multiply in order to get to 12 for each one. So when we have 2/3, this 3 is missing these 2 2's. So we would need to multiply the top and the bottom by 4 essentially, or 2 times 2. Next we look at this next term and we see what we're missing. We see we're missing just 1, 2. So we would just multiply the top and the bottom by 2. Now when we multiply both the top and the bottom by the same number, it's like we're multiplying it just by 1, but it gets us to the same common denominator this way. So then we can add them together. So now when we go ahead and do this, let's go ahead and multiply out. We're going to multiply these 2's, and then we're going to multiply these numbers together, 1 and 2, and then we're just going to keep 5 on by itself. Now let's go ahead and do that. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. Next we have 1 times 2, which is 2, 2 times 3 is 6, times 2 is 12, which is what we should be getting. Then we have 12 here, and just keep it as 5. So now we can go ahead and add. So 8, and when we add just the top numbers together. So 8 plus 2 is 10, plus 5 is 15, and then we keep our common denominator. So we have 15 over 12. Now let's do another example. Find the total resistance of a series circuit that contains 3 resistors given the resistance of 1/4, 3/8, and 1/12 ohms. So we're going to go ahead and add these together. Now, what we can do is we can just break these into the prime factorization. So 4 is really just 2 times 2. 8 is just 2 times 2 times 2. And then 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. So our least common denominator, or least common multiple between these, we're going to have unique factors of 2 and 3. So the number of the highest exponent we're going to assign for the 2 is 3 based upon this number. So we have 3 2's, and then we just have 1 3 in this term. So we'll just leave it as is. So we multiply that out. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. So this will be our least common denominator. Now, when we go back to our problem, we need to multiply by missing factors. So when we look at our least common denominator and we look at this one, we notice we're missing a 2 and a 3. So if we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by 6, or 2 and 3, which is 6. Then we look at the second term. We notice we're missing a 3 on our bottom because we only have 3 2's. So we only have this, but we don't have this. So we just multiply the top and the bottom by 3. And then we look at this third term. We notice we have 2 2's and 1 3. So we're just missing 1 2. So we can just go ahead and multiply them by 2 over 2. Next, we multiply. So we're going to multiply the top numbers together. So 2 times 3 times 1 is 6. And everything will be over 24, so it's our common denominator. Now 3 times 3 is 9. And 1 times 2 is 2. So now let's go ahead and add these together. We have 6, 9, and 2. So 6 plus 9 is 15, plus 2 is 17, which is then over 24. So this is our total resistance. So we're going to place ohms for our units. Now let's do one final example. Example 3. Find the total horsepower for motors given 1/4, 1/3, 3/4, and 3/8. So we're adding all these numbers together. Now, like before, we're going to break this into its prime factorization. So 2 times 2, 3 is just 3. 4 is 2 times 2, and then 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. As we went like this, 2 times 4, and then 2 and 2. So now we've broken this down, we can find our least common denominator. So we notice that we have 2's and 3's again. So our highest exponent that we're going to assign for the 2 is going to be a 3 based upon these 3 2's. Because the other ones are just 2, so we assign the highest exponent. Next we just have 1 3 in this first term, in the second term. So now let's go ahead and multiply that out. So 2 to the third is 8 times 3 is 24. So our least common denominator is 24 again. So we need to now multiply by the missing factors in each term. So for this first one, we are going to go ahead and multiply. So we are missing a 2 and a 3. So we're going to go ahead and multiply that, both on the top and the bottom. Then on this second term, we're missing 3 2's. So 2 times 2 times 2. Then this third term, we're missing a 2 and a 3. And then in this last term, we're missing just a 3. So we'll just multiply the top and the bottom by 3. Now we're going to multiply the top numbers together. So 2 times 3 is 6 times 1 is 6, which is over 24, as that's our least common denominator. Now we have the second term. 2 times 2 times 2 times 1 is just 8 over 24. Now we have 3 times 2 times 3. So 3 times 2 is 6 times 3 is 18. And it's over 24. Next we have 3 times 3, which is just 9, and then over 24. And so in our last step, we're going to go ahead and add all these top numbers together. So we keep our common denominator. Now let's go ahead and add. So we're going to go ahead and just place them like this and add them like this. So 6 plus 8 is 14, plus 8 is 22, plus 9 is 31. Put a 1 below, carry the 3 to the 10. So now 3 plus 1 is now 4. So we get 41 over 24, and this for the units is horsepower. So this is the total horsepower.